Let me start this thing. So, guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Motorcycles. And we have Paul Kraus all the way from Colorado. And we get to talk motorcycles, which I'm super excited. So, it's been a while since we've talked. This is one of those rare ones that I've actually had conversations with you in the past, actually met you. So, it's a little unique in that regard. But so, how are things?
Things are pretty good. It's although we got about 6 inches of wet, heavy snow overnight, which kind of puts a dampener on things. I'll actually start out with I had good news today. I About 2.5 months ago, I picked up a CB100, no title, 680 miles on the thing,
Wow.
and took a couple of months to get it roadworthy, minimal investment. And today I took all the paperwork into the DMV. We were talking about piles earlier. It's all
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
notebook. And they granted me a 60-day temporary tag, and they
yeah,
send off all that stuff to the ether, and
yeah.
cross your fingers, it comes back, and that title comes back in my name.
And those are cool little bikes.
Oh yeah.
With the
This
CB.
thing peps along. Like some of the shakedown runs, there's some.
Hmm.
They say it's a Honda. It's pretty simple, and it is. But there's just a little bit in that carburetor that just still wants to give me a little bit of sputter, and it's all that little dial in stuff. Each one is unique,
Yeah,
that's part of the fun, right?
yeah. You got two things, right? You can either deal with the sputter and hopefully it self clearance, right? Or we can take it off 10 or 12 more times and be at the same result, right?
Oh,
Who knows? Maybe it'll clear itself out. Who knows what it is? It's something in there, but I'm a huge proponent of they just want to fix themselves.
my buddy Kevin, he helped me out through all this, and just parts and pieces. Gave us a Sunday afternoon
Yeah.
to just do our thing, and it's dead of winter, so every space heater known is keeping my garage at a steady 45 degrees
Right.
and or more, and between the carburetor and googling and looking on YouTube, electrical gremlins were pretty common. That ground,
Yeah.
it always traced back to that rear right blinker.
Yeah.
And I found a couple of guys that ran into the same thing. I'm like, oh good, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But it was just a lot of fun to kind of dig into all those components, because maybe we'll get into this in a little bit, but this is not the normal bike for me, in kind of
No.
where I started. It's
Yeah.
each one is a new adventure in understanding what are they, where have they been,
Yeah.
and how do I bring it back. And so that's kind of been the fun thing. And there's some high five moments that we've had
Yeah.
in as we're going through it, and we're both learning. We're not always going to be knowledgeable in it, and but the research is the fun part, right? And trying.
I love. I think that's why I've had so many different types of motorcycles. I love not knowing
Yeah.
and having to figure it out. I love that. Some people do Sudoku or crosswords. I just like to figure out a motorcycle, right? And I love the journey of that, right? That unknown. Although it's definitely nice when you get something you're familiar with. It makes it's a path of least resistance. But trying to figure out, like I've been trying to sort out the wiring on that American Eagle Laverta, and you have to piece first. It's been butchered all over the place, and they don't have a wiring diagram for an American Eagle Laverta. And what Laverta did when they shipped it to American Eagle, it was kind of a bastard bike. It was a combination of a couple of different ones. So we put a generator on this wire, so on this wiring harness, so it's not all the same. You're looking at, I've got two wiring diagrams trying to figure out everything that's going on, and there's only maybe 15 wires on the whole bike.
Yeah.
I was like, I was thinking to myself, and I may go down this road. It would be so much easier if I just rewired the whole thing, match it up exactly. All I know, because the wires change colors throughout. It's been bastardized over time, and it'd be so much easier if I just rebuilt the whole thing. Haven't done it yet, but I'm tempted because I've got all the wires here, all different colors. I can make it match, and it would be perfect. But yeah, this kind of one of those things. But I love the process of discovery, figuring out what I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Speaking of wiring, like I love those seeing the places that make the wiring harnesses, those big looms, they
yeah,
big sheets of board, and it's all mapped out. It makes it look super easy, and then you do one, and hopefully you save the pattern so you can repeat it
yeah.
if it's repeatable.
Look, I've thought about it. Look, all I need is a handful of nails and a sheet of plywood or a blank wall, and I could tack this thing up and run it across. It's not a lot of them, so it's not that difficult. Well, in my head, it's not that difficult. I'm like the damn, what is that, Office Depot easy button? I think everything's easy because why would I tell you? And I tell everybody it's easy because if I tell you it's hard, you're not going to want to do it.
Right.
If I tell you it's easy, you're going to be willing to give it a shot. So I kind of talk myself into things, but it's maybe in over my head sometimes, but you find your way through it, right? It's being able to figure it out.
Do you ever like bump your head against that wall and you're just done? You can walk away, and then it might be a day, it might be a week, and then you're like, oh, they're either an aha moment or you're refreshed, you're ready to go back at it again, and it was there the entire time. You just had to process it. It wasn't always right in front of your nose.
Yeah. Yeah. It happens all the time. I wish I could say it doesn't happen. It happens all the time. I
Oh yeah.
remember talking about electrical gremlin and you being mentioning the ground in the turn signal. They've got some bikes that ground through the taillight. So if the taillight blows, the whole circuit's done. It was a safety feature so you wouldn't run it without a taillight. But the last thing you hold on, what the hell's going on? So let me check the bulb. And it's kind of one of those things you don't sometimes you just miss the obvious things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the run switch is in the off position and you're
Or
kicking it like a crazy person.
you so for everybody at home, Eric and I, we've known each other for about a year now,
Yeah,
and
man, a little over.
become really close friends. This isn't a
Yeah,
cold call at all, but
yeah,
I text you once in a while with like some sort of excitement, or maybe you've come across this. You have a CB
yeah.
125,
Hmm.
and I was banging my head against this thing. I was getting lights and or the ignition, and then I wasn't. I'm like, what the Frankadonk? And it was the fuse,
Yeah,
the main fuse, and I had
yeah,
changed the fuse, but it wasn't exactly the fuse. It was the connection
yeah.
points, and they
Right.
just need a little pinch. And learning
Yeah,
moment number 722.
yeah. Oh, believe me, I had a motorcycle. Well, my wife and I were on. I think I may have shared this story before. My wife and I were on talking about these. Sometimes it's the little things, right? Uh, two things. First one, we're on a moped trip when we lived in Connecticut. Her and I, two mopeds. The challenge was there's 22 lighthouses that dotted the Connecticut shoreline, and so we were going to ride the shoreline. And I'm on a Gorelli Super Sport. She's on a little motorcane. In 3 days, only what we could fit in the saddlebags on hers, and it was perfect. Never went over 30 miles an hour. Used a little over like a gallon and a half of gas, something like that. Mine had been giving me problems before I left. But you just work through it. You kind of know where they are and you kind of work around it. Sure enough, halfway through the last day, we're maybe 30 miles away from home and it just crapped out. We thankfully it's a moped, so you can then pedal it, right? So we pedal it into a gas station which wasn't that far away. End up calling AAA to have it towed home to get home to find out that I was out of gas. I was at a gas station. Sometimes it's the little things, you mentioned a fuse. I replaced a wiring entire wiring harness on a CB 550 to find out I had a blown fuse. I needed to replace the wiring harness is what I tell myself. It had some monkey business that we just wanted to sort out, but yeah, it was. Sometimes it's a little thing, right?
And those are always going to come up to you, but I'll bet you're going
Yeah.
to check that next time.
Mm-hmm. See, the run switch gets me more often than not, especially when somebody rides one of mine, because I started off with, and we're going to get into your kind of bike history. I started off with older motorcycles that didn't have a run switch. So to turn it off, you turn the key. So that's my habit. I just turn the key off. I never use the run switch or seldom use the run switch. If I do, it's off and then right back on,
Mhm.
and then I turn the key off. So it's always in the on position. But if somebody else rides it, that's not their habit. Their habit
Right.
is just to run, switch, turn the key off. And so just because of that, I never check it because I always leave it when I ride, I always leave it in the on position. And so it's just kind of one of those things. But now I've got to get in the habit of, okay, let me check the run switch. Okay, that's it. These knuckleheads. So let's talk about what was your first since well let me before I ask what your first motorcycle is. um you made a statement, and I want to kind of dig into it a little bit more, that the CB100 is not your normal motorcycle.
Yeah.
Something to that regard. So what would fill me in on that?
Well, it kind of coincides with, where did it all start? And,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on a farm in Western Kansas, and, on that said farm, we had three-wheelers.
Yeah.
My older brothers, I'm the youngest of six kids. So my older brothers had shared two ACT 90 three-wheelers. Yeah. Dad eventually picked up a Honda 185S as kind of his working trike, and we had the Smoky Hill River in our back pasture, and water crossings, and fixing fence and chasing cattle, all that stuff. And when he wasn't looking, sometimes you go out into a sand pit and you do figure eights and tear it up, and he tells you not to. And
Right.
I even put it through a couple inches of ice in a shallow pond, doing figure eights after school one day, and
Yeah.
I rushed it home, and I was colder than all get out, but I was able to clean it up, and no one was none the wiser. But I say all that because in the back of the shed on a pile of timbers was my dad's 1947 Whizzer motorbike that he bought new in 1947 when he was in high school. And the irony is he didn't want any of us to have dirt bikes because they were dangerous, but we had three-wheelers. Now I'll go to my grave saying, I did some stupid stuff on that three-wheeler, hill climbs or whatever, but I'm still here and I'm talking to my friend Eric, as many people did. And there's a whole other article and an interview about, three-wheelers and their history and probably what went down safety-wise.
And well, before we move off from that, because I'm with you. I had friends that had three-wheelers, and my cousins had them, and we'd ride in pits and everything. Crazy things we shouldn't do, right? In the middle of the night with that crappy little headlight on those things.
If it worked.
I flipped one end over end backwards, with two of us on it going up a steeper grade than we should have. Thankfully nobody got hurt. But I think it was just in marketing. I think the reason why they got a bad rap, I think it was all in marketing, because they gave them to children first off, and the short wheelbase, and gave them to children because they were safer, because they're stable, right? They don't have to worry about them falling over. They're not going to fall over. I mean, they will roll over, but they're not going to fall over. And I think that was their problem. And they made them in a 70 version. They made them in a 90 version. Those damn 70s are so cute. They're little bitty. And yeah, I'd want my kid to have one of those.
Oh, yeah.
But they had, I think the difference between riding a three-wheeler and riding a two-wheeled motorcycle, whether it be a dirt bike, a small displacement one, the three-wheeler gives you this false sense of security. A motorcycle, you have to be in control. Right, because you're the balance point on this thing. Well, three-wheeler, you didn't have that, so people got into them at the wrong time with zero skills and a whole lot of thumb pressure, and you just go at it, man. Why are you going to let off that damn thing? It's too much fun. I mean,
it was a lot of fun.
We have a Kawasaki KLT 250, and it was a friend of mine's father-in-law's that he used it on a ranch. The farm that they have, he used it out there to mend fences and all that stuff. It's exactly what it was designed for, right? To go work, not to put a bunch of dumb kids on it doing dumb things. It was a tool, and we still use it. I bought it from him probably 4 years ago because it had been just sitting in a barn, and we'd been looking for something to use around the house to garden with. We towed a cart on it, and we can do yard work, and we had it's springtime here, so we have yard work that we have to get ready to do. So I had to make sure it was in service. So we haven't used it since probably the end of the summer last year. So we only use it for the 2.5, 3 months that we need it, and then it just sits in the waiting to be used. But this thing is just a tool. I mean, it works so well. And to hearing you growing up with the way they were designed and purpose built, like the early CT90s, the dual sport, right? The Cubs that had mud guards, had not mud guards, but the skid plate on the bottom. They had those things marketed with a gun rack. You could buy a Honda accessory with a gun rack, so you'd use it to put a. They even had marketing for it that had a deer on the back of the gun rack in a Honda ad. You take this thing hunted. It's so funny because maybe I'll put it in this video. But the guy has a gun. He's got a dead deer over the gun rack on the back, and he's on a little CT90. But they built it for this, and I think these three-wheelers were purpose built for some of that, and then it just got expanded because people always want to make them do things that they weren't designed to do, and they were a kick in the pants. But so I love it. We had loads of fun on the three-wheelers that my friends had, and we did so. Before we move on to three-wheelers, the dumbest thing you guys did, what was it?
For me, it was definitely hill climbs, because they do pull over, and I weighed maybe a 95 cents, and that 185 get enough steam and you can get to the top, and it goes up and it tumbles down with you, and then you try it again and see how much farther up you can get up the hill. So for sure. That's pretty crazy. I would say the dumbest thing that we did, and we did this on a regular. So my friend who had maybe the 200, the ATC 200. I'm not, don't really catch it was either 185 or 200. And the neighborhood backed up to a shopping center, big shopping center. And they had a grocery store. And in the grocery store, behind the grocery store, the bread guy would deliver the bread on those plastic trays. Well, we found out that an empty parking lot and about 20 feet of rope tied to the back of things on this plastic bread tray that you hold on, and imagine jet skiing, pulling somebody. That's what we did in a parking lot. And till we had that was version 1.0. Version 2.0 was 2 stacks, 2 layers of the bread trays with a stop sign in between that I don't know where we found it, that stuck in between them, because once you started seeing sparks, it was time to change trays, because the first time you wore through that tray too quick. And if you had nothing there but your butt and the concrete, and your friend doesn't want to stop when you start yelling, right? That's not what they do. And so, we would do that on the regular. We're lucky we never got killed on that thing, doing that, because you would get going way too fast, and it's just looking to get killed. And we had on our safety gear was like shorts and a t-shirt. No, it's the thing. So we had them all. The three-wheelers aren't the death machines that they were made out to be. I think just like anything else, I think it'll kill you in the wrong hands. But we made it through it. Look at that. Yeah, here we are.
Mm-hmm. So 1947 Whizzer that your dad bought new.
Yeah. It always sat in the back, and I can remember as a kid leaning it up, sitting on it, just kind of dreaming about it, type of thing. But it was a prized possession of his. Like, of all the things that he had kept from his childhood, that was the one. And he bought it in high school, went to college, left it on the farm. The existing farm hands rode it around, then put it away, and he joined the Navy. Came back to Kansas in 1960 to start his own farm operation, and took it to his new home, and that's where it sat. And he always had dreams of getting it fixed back up again. And fast forward a number of years, and I believe it was 2008, 2009. I finally had settled here in Colorado, and I said, "Hey, can I have a go at it?" He gladly gave me the nod. So what's remarkable about this, Eric, is that we have the Kansas title, and that has its own story to it. Stapled
Yeah.
to the title was registration, but it was registered in 1948.
Wow.
The registration number and the Kansas plate match.
Wow.
And I said it was a 47 and registered in 48. Well, he did get in trouble for not registering. He rode it from his
Yeah.
family farm to town,
Yeah.
and there was enough activity there that they said, "Hey, you need to make
Yeah.
this right." So he was. It was a $5 registration fee for 1948, and then a penalty of $8
Oh, for not. Yeah.
for not. So basically, paying for 47 for $5
Yeah.
and a $3 penalty. So,
Yeah.
which is a kind of a fun story. If you know my dad, he was an upright citizen, and
Yeah.
did buy did things the right way. And but when he didn't have the title right away, and I got a call at work, and he never called me at work, and I thought, who died?
Yeah.
And he was going through his files, and he found the Kansas title, the registration,
Awesome.
the owner's manual, all in an envelope. So he'd kept all
Wow.
this stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. And so we had a lot of fun with that. And a couple years before, actually about a year before he died, we were with him, and it was Christmas time, and he had pulled down a wood box that he had made in high school, and had a bunch of curios, things from his travel.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going through pictures and things, and in it were two receipts.
Uh-uh.
And I say two because the Whizzer was a kit motor that he ordered and from a small company, and actually an upholsterer shop in our hometown.
Wow.
And he also bought a Schwinn purpose-built frame that was adjusted for the belt clearance for the drive system. And my wife was looking at these receipts, and she said, "Paul, this one says bicycle." I'm like, "What?" And I opened it up, and sure enough, it said Schwinn, and it's all kind of rubbed in a little bit from time,
Right.
but I can make out the serial number. And I'm like, "Oh, that matches the serial number that Schwinn put on the underside of the crank."
Wow.
And then the other one, we went straight to it, and it had the H motor model number, serial number on it, and I'm like, I started crying with joy.
Yeah.
It was the best Christmas ever. And just putting all that together. The only thing we don't have is a picture of him as a kid
on it,
and that would be it. He had a big family, and it maybe somewhere in the archives of my cousins and distant cousins, hidden in a box in some other location. Maybe it's there, and I've put the APB out for it. Nothing's come up, but I'm okay with that, because this stinking bike has provided more adventure than you could even ask for. And I built it. I wanted to know what I had, and so I researched it with the forums. People were very helpful, and a gentleman helped me rebuild the motor. It took about 3 weeks for the lifters to soak and free up, and he got it running, and it was great to kind of put it all back together, and then take it to shows. That was all I wanted to do, is get it out there. And it's the only one really that shows up at car shows around here, and maybe I'm just that guy, but you end up getting some of the fellas that come in, and they're like, I had one, or I always wanted one. But the one that I remember the most was this gentleman in a wheelchair. He was being pushed, and I could see kind of across the way, he's like, "Oh, let's go look at the Whizard. There's a Whizard." And he said, I left two of them in the garage when I moved out of Topeka. And I engaged, and we started talking, and he was talking about the controls, which are really, they take a little bit of getting accustomed to, the compression, release, and throttles on one side, and the clutch, it's a belt drive, so it's just an engage and disengage clutch. And he was walking through all that to his buddy, and I asked him, I said, would you like me to start it up for you, to hear it again? And it's got a distinctive sound. And it was probably a 95-degree day on pavement, and one kick on, I didn't even have to climb on it, just one kick on a center stand, and it just fired right up. And that guy grabbed the arms of his wheelchair, and he almost stood up, and
Yeah,
you could just see the memory flush across
yeah.
his face, and that's why we do these things sometimes. And you know, it just goes to show that the impact that these little two-wheel machines can have on a kid or a young adult or an adult at any time in life.
You know, it's really interesting you bring it up, and you mentioned that because it is. It's like I was talking to a guy actually, was it earlier today or yesterday, something like that, about it's the emotion that attached to some of these motorcycles. It's like it's the reason why there's such a market for mini trails, little Honda Z50s, Trail 70s, those small displacement bikes, because they had kids that had them when they were younger. Now they're older. They've got the means and the resources to get relive their childhood. And so that's why I believe those prices are where they are and they stay up there because people that are emotionally connected to them. You know, it's not somebody looking, hey, I want a mini bike. Let me go find one. No, it's these people that want that one that they had when they were a kid again, and they'll pay a premium for it. And but that's what emotion does to you, right? It's kind of one of those things, and that connection that weaves through. That's one of the beauty, one of the beautiful things about riding these old motorcycles, even having this conversation right now, is you find this common bond with people you would have never known if you would have passed that guy in the wheelchair 2 hours before at a restaurant. But put it in the right context with the right uh, bits of information there, the right motorcycle, you can bring this guy to life just like that. It's kind of crazy the way it happens.
Yeah, it's totally true, and you know, I tell this story, and I'm very proud of this story because it created a great bond with my dad. You know,
Mm-hmm.
an adult bond, right? You know, you
Mm-hmm.
go off in the world and start a career,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of distance there, and then you know, this brought us back, and we, you know, with the modern marvel of FaceTime, I could
Yeah.
be 5.5 hours away, and we're putting the chain on together for the first
Right.
time and getting it running and starting it, and you know, he talked about, you know, driving down the road and how the magneto interfered with radios and you could hear the click click click, and all those memories start coming
Yeah.
back for
Yeah.
him. And he did get to ride it for a very short moment, and I do have like a still photo. His balance wasn't as great, and he didn't it was after the restoration, and he didn't want to
Yeah.
mess that up, and he's like, I've gone far enough, this is great. And so, you know, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And you know, there's some small clubs that I was asked to write some articles on,
Yeah.
and on the bike. And you know, a friend of mine, Kevin, who helped me with the
Yeah.
CB100, had sent me a post on Facebook. It was in January of 2020, no, 2018, and it was a call for entrance for a new Discovery Channel TV show.
Oh wow.
And he said they were looking for vehicles and families, or vehicles with a story.
Right.
And so I, sitting on my couch on a Sunday evening, filled it all out on my phone. They asked for
Mm-hmm.
photos and a couple of videos as it sat, and
Right.
it sits in my garage under a cover, and I did all that. And by early March, and a few interviews later, the bike and I were in Los Angeles on a TV set, and
That's awesome.
in an old Firestone tire factory.
Wow.
And we filmed a segment, and I got to tell the story. That event kind of helped spark more motorcycles in my
Yeah.
life, and because of the energy back in my hometown, somebody had reached out to my father and said, "Hey, I've got a Whizzer. Would your son be interested in that?" And so they went and looked in the barn, and sent me some pictures, and that wasn't a Whizzer. Now it had
Okay.
Whizzer grips once we came
Right.
to terms with it, but it was a roller without a tank and engine, but it didn't look familiar. And again, you go back to the forums and the groups, and what it turned out to be was a 1947 Luray power cycle. And these were motorbikes built in Milwaukee by two brothers, Larry and Ray. And
Wow.
I had initially passed on it because it wasn't a Whizzer.
Right.
And my wife elbowed me and about a week later and said, you know what my middle name is? I hand on
You
forehead.
said,
Her middle name is Luray, spelled differently.
oh, yeah.
But again, it was kind of going back to our research conversation earlier. Like, what do I have, and what's it going to take to get this thing rolling? And finding parts is absolutely impossible. Larry and Ray were shut down for back taxes, and everything was liquidated. But there are enough enthusiasts in the motorbike groups that could help me get to where I'm at, and I was able to secure an engine. Actually, the gentleman in Gig Harbor, Washington, Dennis, he wanted to buy the bike because he had one. He wanted an original one, and he wanted a restored one, and he wanted to use mine as the restoration. And I said, "There's something about this," and it was the last project my dad and I were able to kind of do long
Awesome.
distance like, and he was a part of it the entire way. I said, I can't do that, and so Dennis built me an engine that was accurate to what the bike is, and sourcing some tanks and things like that. And I went back to my hometown, and a good friend of mine, Craig, he understood the assignment and helped me get it painted. He's a wonderful artist with a spray gun and all the prep, and it was one of those things where it really kind of came home. And the day I took delivery of it was our hometown Harley Davidson dealership had a welcome home for the cross country chase riders from the area. And they opened it up to anybody else that had vintage bikes, and this is too good to be true. And I've got a photo with my folks and a couple of my siblings that were there, and sitting in the lobby of a Harley Davidson dealership with other Milwaukee built bikes, but this is not one that anybody else had seen. Right. But
that's I always say the motorcycles are cool, but the stories are way better.
Yeah.
The stories are way better. I love so much about the Whizzer story that hits me, and probably hits other people that hear it. It's so nice to think, and I hope that one day that my sons at some point say that, oh, you know what, that thing's been hanging around here forever. I'm going to make sure it runs too. Right? There's something about that. A son paying homage to his father through this means, right? This medium, if you will, is kind of interesting, and it's a neat way to do it. Us boys, we don't grow up with you shake hands, you rub some dirt on it. You don't get to. We're not really taught the same way girls are to love in that same, or to show it in that same regard. And paying homage in this respect is all that it's about. It's the only thing it's about. It's got very little to do with the motorcycle. It has to do with the person behind it. And that I truly appreciate. It reminds me of Pete Gertz from Pete's Classic Cycle and his dad's Z1, Kawasaki Z1, that he rode from Canada across the U.S. and back. And Pete has it and restored it, and that there's something about that, that I'm envious of. I think I appreciate that. So, and I love that story. I can hear this Whizzer story on repeat every day. I think it's just magical. I mean, it's one of there's something about it. I don't know what it is, but there's something about doing that and doing that for your father. You did it to restore a motorcycle, but let's be honest.
And it's how it introduced me to our friend Bob Kelly, friend of the channel. And the first car show I took it to was here in our town of Erie, Colorado. The town fair has a small car club, and I wrote it down and parked it, and all of a sudden I heard a Whizzer, and there's Bob Kelly.
Yeah.
handed me a flyer to a bike show that he started about 15 years ago. And, we talk about, you and I know each other for about a year, and
Yeah.
it's going to go decades past this. Bob and I have
Yeah.
known each other since 2009.
Yeah.
And no, I'm sorry, 2014. 2014? Yeah, thank God. I'm losing it. 2014. And we live a couple miles apart. And, he said, I'd like you to come to my show. This would be perfect. And, now fast forward 10 years and I'm helping him put on the show and meet interesting characters who decide to ride motorcycles untested halfway across the country and back.
Dude.
Uh,
Horrible decision. Horrible decision.
with the
No,
greatest outcome, because I loved. Here's something I was thinking about, Eric, is that I didn't understand how much you had been tested getting here. And I know Kansas wind, I totally get it. I tried to give you a couple of, handful of shops along the way that maybe if you ran into trouble, you could call on and they would do you a solid. But you pulled in with an oily foot and kind of a glaze on your face into that parking lot. And I was jumping for joy. It was like, Eric's here.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize just kind of the mental exhaustion and watching your video, stopping just on the outskirts of town to call Carrie and just have that celebratory, I made it moment. I didn't process that. I'm kind of like that kid that, the pretty girl's talking to you and you have none the wiser that she has any interest in you. For this, it was, you needed time to decompress and stuff like that. And I was just, reflecting on that experience. I was so grateful that you reached out a couple months prior and started the conversation, just being proactive. And, I can't wait to see what else we can do in the future someday.
Oh, me too. It's, and you hit it on the head. There was something, and, my son is a mental performance coach. Same name. His name's, we're not very creative once you have 4 kids, right? And so same name, but he's a mental performance coach. He works with athletes. And we talked a bunch about this and about the journey and about, what I might go through and things like that. It's kind of interesting having your kid be, your youngest child kind of giving you advice, which totally awesome. I in a great way, I say that. And he had said, and just remember, when you get there, you're only halfway. And so that stuck in the back of my head, but I forgot it when I got there because I'm only halfway. I still have to ride this damn thing home, right? It's the horse I rode in on. There's not another option, and I still have to ride this thing home. And I didn't quite settle in until I was on when it really hit me from, I guess, when the adrenaline and everything came down from arriving was when I started my way back. And I only made it maybe 100 miles, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 150 miles. And I was just done. I was just tired. I was just everything. I was trying to find some energy. I stopped at a couple of places to try to find some energy to kind of keep going. And I just had I called it an early day. And I think I started late and I had an early day, but it was just one of those things. But I would recommend it to anybody. I would recommend people to do some research before they do it, maybe to pack the right gear, things like that. But everybody needs to do something like this. I just talked to this guy and he rode a mini trail from one end of the UK to the other end, like 1,200 miles on a Honda monkey bike. And so, yeah, it doesn't, you don't have to have the right motorcycle. You just have to have a little bit of, what is it I want to say? Not insanity, but there's something that this is going to be an adventure. You got to have a little bit of an adventurous spirit and say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm not an expert about riding cross country. I only know the limited 10-day experience that I have. And then another one riding from here to Florida, but that was a little shorter. But there's something about the freedom of doing it on a motorcycle, and the freedom of doing it um, without a net.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that you just have to sort this stuff out. Right? You just got to figure it out. There's something. I remember when I broke down. This is probably one of those moments, and I have, and no offense to wives out there, but mine is the best one. Uh, because when I broke down before I got picked up, and this was on day two, and I was really thinking about. I had the towel in my hand. I was looking for, where do I throw this damn thing, right? I had already researched U-Hauls, have put this thing in the back, and I just head home. I was only at that point. I was probably about maybe 600 miles away from home, so I wasn't that far from home. That's a day trip, and we could totally do this. I was looking for a way out. I called her up, told her I'm broke down. I'm on the side of the road. She goes, "Don't worry, you'll figure it out." That was the only thing she had. That was the motivation. I think she was like, had plans, and don't come home now, right? It's it's like, look, I'm still, I've got 8 more days, so there was something about, but she just said, "Don't worry, you'll figure it out." And sure enough, we did. And it's just kind of one of those things. It's that, holy hell, who knows what's going to happen? But there's something about that, holy hell, who knows what's going to happen, that where the greatness lives, I think.
Yeah. And it reconfirms she knows you well.
Yeah, just needed a little kick in the pants.
Just needed a little nudge.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just one of those things. But yeah, thanks for. It was an amazing experience. I hate to beat that big red motorcycle. I'm not going to call it a dead horse, but it's a story that's been told, and it's just one of those things. If there's one motorcycle left at the end of the day that I have, it's going to be that one, just because it knows where all the bodies are buried. Because I don't know if you do this, but when you're out on your motorcycle for a while, you end up talking to it because there's nobody else around. I don't listen to music or anything like that. And so I talk to the motorcycle, because I tell people, it's easier to tell people I talk to a motorcycle than telling them I talk to myself. So that we went through everything. We solved all the world's problems on that ride, because there wasn't anything else to do but just to work our way through it. And some of that showed up in the videos, more of me making it out like it was us against them. I don't know who them is. I think I refer to it as they think we can't do this, or they think we can't make it. And I remember that specifically, and I don't know who they is. There was some made up adversary, just so we could motivate ourselves. Like, damn you to think we can't do this. And it was probably that doubt in our head that we were talking to, right? It's who knows?
I remember talking to the Whizzer for the first time when it blew a head gasket, and you talked about the Motorbicane having pedals. So does this Schwinn balloon tire bicycle with a kit engine mounted to it, and I had a big long uphill to go, and it's a heavy steel frame to begin with, and add a little bit more with the motor, and but we talked, and I could feel the puff on the side of my pant leg, and I'm like, oh, this is, we got to get you home, and we had a conversation all the way home, and it was we'll get you back in order. It'll be okay.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, and I think it feels good. I think the first thing that, and I've shared this about the trip. It was 3,000 miles. Didn't quite make it to the finish line. Made it home in the back of the truck, but that's another story. But the biggest challenge was just doing it. And I know we had a couple of conversations before, and I even said that I was going to do it whether it was on the GPZ or not. We were going to take other motorcycles. We can take other motorcycles. But when I made that left turn off of my road onto the main road in our neighborhood, I had already won. I agreed that I was going to leave on Tuesday, whatever the date was, maybe the 6th of June. That I was going to leave at that time, at that date, at this time, and I did. I didn't even have to make it out of my neighborhood. I had already won, because I said I was going to do it, and I did it. As crazy as what it was, but we made it a little bit further. So
I'd
which
say,
was awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's an awesome motorcycle. Everything about it is great. I love it. We have more trips planned. The plan was to try to do a lap around Florida before it gets too hot on the GPZ. So I've got to clear the decks in the garage so I can just leave for. I'm going to take a while. I think it ends up being like 1,800 miles as I mapped it, and I think I'm going to take a week to do it. No destination except home, and then kind of wander my way through. And that's something that I think we're going to do. We're also going to use, I don't know if you ever heard of them, Bunka Biker.
No.
It's like Airbnb, but for motorcycles, and it's free. So it's called Bunka Biker. They've got a Bunka Biker, I think it's bunkabiker.com. And it's just crowdsourced. So these people agree to be hosts. And you agree to be host, you host to whatever degree you want to. It could be just support. That if you're coming through the area, you need, I'll buy you a beer, a cup of coffee, a dinner, whatever. Just somebody to talk to. Or all the way to place to stay. You can stay in, we got a room in our house, or we have tent space outside, or you can stay in the garage. We have tools. I've got a truck and trailer. If you break down, it's whatever. It's all that. It costs no money. So I want to give that a shot, just kind of working my way around Florida, because there tends to be a lot of them. You can look them up and I think they have them all over the world. So you can look it up and you can agree to be a host, or you can just to whatever degree you want to do it on. It's
Right.
like, I don't know if you remember years ago, there was a website called Couchsurfing, to where you could do basically the same thing, but you could surf on people's couches. And this is basically it, but it's called Bunka Biker. So I want to use that because you should run into some pretty interesting folks along the way.
It makes me think of a YouTube channel, Itchy Boots, Nora Lee from the Netherlands. Yeah. And I discovered her because she passed through Nederland, Colorado, which is just 30 miles due west of where I live.
Right.
And I'm like, this is fascinating. And backtracking on her story and, how she came from, started in Patagonia and working her way north, and COVID shut down, and she restarted her piece as things started opening up and made it to Alaska. Now she's in, I think the last video I was looking at was she was in touring Madagascar, but she had started in the Netherlands, working her way down. But I love her approach. It really helps you understand true reality of different spaces and the kindness of people. I mean, she's laid over in the mud a couple of times, and there's always somebody there willing to help with a smile. And she's tested with some border crossings here and there, and but she eats when she can, and she's very pragmatic and travels light. And I'm rooting for her. Our whole family watches it. It's so good, and
it really is.
Having a geological background, she's able to kind of bring a little bit of that into the story. And what are they farming? And large charcoal semis loaded with charcoal, and I can't even go into it. It's its own thing. But finding a place to stay. I'm like, where do you find a place to stay? How do you? And she kind of goes into it a little bit, but it's remarkable, and we're rooting for it. It's I'm so grateful that somebody like that is able to do that. And I'm sure there's more Itchy Boots out there. Just she happens to be one that I've stumbled upon and continue to follow. Her content's great, and it starts to spark some ideas. What can I do? What's my adventure? And when is that? And
that's it. Even if it's and Paul, you bring up something great. It may not be this grand adventure on the scale of what we look at when we see Itchy Boots, her going cross country, going from Patagonia all across continents, right? Going from Patagonia all the way to Alaska. It doesn't have to be this grand adventure. It's just, if you've got one in the garage, let's just get on it.
Yeah.
Right. Let's just get and go. Right.
I have a 1969 Honda CT90. I picked up, not too far away. It had been sitting, a lot of gunk in the tank and the carb, and it's got the oddball carb that uh, continues to give me some challenges, but I've got it running smooth this year. This winter I gave it some good proper attention, and just north of us is Rocky Mountain National Park, and midsummer is a one-way switchback dirt road that is called Old Fall River Road, and I've got a goal to document and run up Old Fall River Road, have my family as the SAG vehicle behind me, and just in case. And a good friend of mine, Jason, picked up a CT1 or Trail 110, and we thought about, like, once he gets his in proper shape, we could do it together, and that would be a lot of fun. And I'm like, well, maybe, would the park mind if all of us paid entrance fees and we had a whole troop of us going up there? And it's just beautiful land. There's a great place to picnic halfway up, and there's waterfalls, and what a cool, I mean, it'll be a day, but what a great day that would be. And is it out in the total wilderness? No, it's in a national park that's well traveled. But let's do it. Let's find it. But I've been dreaming that up for a little while now with this particular bike, and I think that time is getting closer. We're gonna make that happen.
Yeah, that would be awesome. One of my big dreams. Well, we have two that I really want to do. One is the Trans-America Trail that goes from, I think it goes from like Tennessee all the way across the country. And want to do that I originally wanted to do it on a CL350 because I had it. That's the bike that's right here.
Yeah.
That guy right there. That was the one I originally wanted to do it on. But I think I have a CL450 right now that may be the one that it's a little bit bigger. It's not a, how do I put this? The trail is not a very technical trail. It's well maintained and things like that. You'll have some spots that you have to go through, but it's not, you can do it on a dual sport bike. The other big adventure that we want, and this involves Carrie, is we want to tour Italy on Vespas.
I've got a friend out here, a friend of Bob and I. They do something called the Small Bike Big Adventure, and this year is riding through the Black Hills in South Dakota, but it's all small displacement bikes. But he also does this in Italy as well, so they spend a little bit of their time over there. And Todd's one of those guys. He also likes the oddball bikes. But those adventures are what really help bond people, bring them together, tell stories, and continue the heritage of these two-wheel machines.
If I have one purpose on the planet, is to encourage people to get their motorcycles, and even if you restore them, this great beautiful motorcycle, get it out of your garage, even just ride it to the grocery store, because you will meet so many people, and you get to share what you just spent all this time, energy, and effort in doing with people that'll appreciate it, because somebody's going to come up to you and go, wow, what's that? Or I had one of those when I was a kid, or my grandfather had one of those. I've never seen one of those. And that's what needs to happen more with these old motorcycles, I think.
Hey, Paul Kraus, Erie, Colorado.
What'd you bring for me to look at today?
I brought my dad's 1947 Whizzer Model H. My dad bought it when he was a sophomore in high school.
Well, that's certainly cool, man.
He bought it in January 1947 from a small shop in Hays, Kansas.
Now, it's obviously in beautiful condition. Was it like this when you got it?
No, it was sitting in the back of the barn on a pile of timber, pretty dusty and crusty and coated with oil. And about 8 years ago, he signed it over to me, and I paid him $1 for it.
$1. The question begs to be asked, what do you think it's worth?
It's such a priceless piece for me. How about $4,000?
Well, it's that time when I need to introduce you to one of our appraisers. He's an expert on anything with two wheels. Nick, come on in.
Great pleasure, Nick Smith.
Hi, Paul Kraus.
Good to meet you. Thank you for bringing it in. 1940s Whizzer. My initial question is, how much of it is original?
I'm going to say about 90% of it is original.
Really?
Yeah.
That's going to add a great deal of value.
There's things I had to replace, like the throttle and the compression release handles. The speedometer is a replacement, just the years in a hot old barn, it just roached it.
They deteriorate in time, so replaced items is perfectly okay. So obviously beautiful restoration. The paint on it is glorious, beautiful color scheme. I do love the Kansas license plate.
And that's original.
An original spec seat, twin springs, obviously it's been recovered, restored there. All of that will add value. And then the engine. It looks to be in very good condition, and from the staining here, obviously it's been used.
I got a question. How much horsepower?
2.
2.
Well, in all fairness, it started off at 1.5.
Okay.
And when it got to the Model H, they breathed on it a little bit and it whopped it all the way up to
They bumped it up
2.5
to-
horsepower.
Okay.
Does it run?
It does run.
Can we hear it run?
Sure.
She sounds great.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, that's great. I do see the expander brake.
Yes.
That's a particularly rare item, as I understand it.
It is.
That's going to add quite a lot of value. That's quite a coveted piece, that. Was that on the bike when you found it?
It was.
So an original petrol tank?
Yes.
This is the kind of thing that's going to add a great deal of value. A little blemish in the paint there, obviously, from the cable. I think that it'll probably detract some value. Can we have a look at the other side?
Yeah.
The lovely exhaust, everything seems to be quite original and in lovely restored condition.
Well, what do you think, Nick? Have we seen enough?
I think we have.
Bought it off Dad for $1. Very smart purchase. Thinking the value as it sits right now, about $4,000. Nick, what do you got for us?
90% of the bike seems to be real. There are some things that obviously aren't. With regards to value, I think that you're about right. I think that a Whizzer in nice condition that runs and rides is in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. But if you take this to somewhere else and take it out of context, let's say to a car auction, at a car auction, something like this is a wonderful addition to a gentleman's carriage house and his discerning collection of fine automobiles, and it's a bit of fun. We've seen numerous examples in this kind of condition, with this kind of originality, do between $9,000 and $10,000.
Wow. Wow. That's really awesome. Thanks for your info
You're
today.
more than welcome.
Appreciate
Great
it.
pleasure.
Dad would be really pleased to hear that.
Oh, that's nice. That's good to hear.
Approximately 65 years after he put it in the barn in the first place, he got on it and took it for a short ride. It was just smiles. It was just like, wow.